Hello and welcome. My name is Nathan Brown, and this is part 2 of 3 of the NAB K2 SharePoint Search Query Broker. So last time we saw a very simple query that we'd made. We turned that into a smart object, CAML query that was, and then we retrieved that through the smart object tester. In this case, that was a static query. I'm just going to bring that query up here for a slight review. We can see here that it's a very, very basic CAML query. It's bringing you back 3 fields. It's performing a simple order by, and then returning the results. That's very handy for some lookup lists, and if you're populating a combo box or drop-down box with values, this is very convenient and simple and maybe all you need. However, to really be functional, you need to be able to pass parameters to your query so that it can be filtered down to just the results you're interested in. So I'm going to make a new query here. Oops, I have to certainly select a folder here. So I'm going to create a new query. This is going to be for a mock assets list. So in this case, I'm going to be running against a very similar list that I did before. So I'm picking my site and my relative URL from my site. So in this case, it's in the systems site, specifically the lists systems asset list. And again, I could use the generate CAML to pull back information, but I've already pre-configured a CAML query for this purpose. You can see here it actually performs a where clause within this CAML query. So we've got a where parameter, and then we're returning several fields. This has certainly got a hard-coded value in here for this the text value. I'm going to start with that value, and I suggest that when you're designing queries that you certainly start with something that's going to execute and run without any variability, making sure that it runs first. So I'm going to go to my columns tab down here at the bottom, and then I'm just going to detect. So as always, I'm prompted for connection information. And then we clearly see here that it found 14 columns and it added those 14 here to my query. I understand that as we said before, there's these 5 columns are the columns we're interested in. SharePoint by default, when you run a CAML query, returns additional information that you may not have asked for. Those values, only the values rather that you check here as include will be included as returned to K2. So in this case, I'm just going to uncheck everything and then just check the columns that I'm interested in. So those are the columns that I'd like to return. So now, just as before, I'm going to go ahead and give this a quick test. And sure enough, I see here's the information that I'm after: my title, my model, purchase date, created date, and serial number of these assets. And again, since I'm filtering on Lenovo, that I would get back the results that I'm pretty much expecting here: some ThinkPads and so forth. So great. I'm just going to go ahead and save this just to make sure that I save it. Right, save first. And I'll just go ahead and re-edit this. So now what I'd like to do is to make this really functional. Let's say we want to filter based on brand. So I'm just going to I've already added that where clause in here. I'm going to now remove this Lenovo and replace it with a parameter. So I put my cursor exactly where I'd like my parameter to be. And since this is CAML, it's really just a matter of text substitution. So I'm just going to press the add parameter button here. And it gives me a little a parameter tag, and this is just a simple tag. It's going to do a text macro replace here with the value that's provided by K2 into this value. So I'm just going to call this brand, since that's the field that we're interested in. Now we're going to go to, instead of our columns tab, we're going to go to our parameters tab, and I'm going to use the detect button again. This is very similar as the columns. It goes through, parses the query, looks for anything with a special tag, gives us the clearly says, hey, and if this will remove anything that's not already used. So sure enough, it found our brand tag. So we can give this now a name. The ID here needs to match the actual tag value. The name is how it's going to be exposed in K2. So I'll just properly case that so it looks a little bit nicer. This is brand of asset, and this is just, again, going into the metadata. I could change the type of this if I wanted to specify as memo, or if it didn't understand it, I could put this in as a date value. If you do use dates and times, it is going to translate those local time to universal time. So you just have to be aware of that, and that's something that's certainly built into K2 as well, that K2 is going to be using its local time, and then this will translate it to universal time. Additionally, we can mark this as required or not, and that will certainly be reflected in K2 as if this parameter to this query, this smart object, will be required. So I'm just going to go ahead and now give this a secondary test. And when I do, you'll notice that this time, instead of just bringing up the result, it's actually asking me for a value here. So I'm going to do the Lenovo. I'm going to use the same query parameter that I did before. Just hit OK, and sure enough, I see the same values that I saw before. Okay. So I'm being very confident. I'll just press OK. I'm just going to save this. Again, it's saved it to happens to be in the same place that that my service instance is pulling from. So all I have to do is refresh my service instance. If you were certainly working with a test or production server, you might have to post this configuration file to the new location, to the runtime location. Since I'm not don't need to do that here on my development machine, all I have to do is refresh this service instance. As soon as I do, it's going to reparse that file, and sure enough, now we see two different service objects, my asset list, and if I look at the methods here, list assets, I can see my parameter now exists here, brand, as a text value, and it's required. So really quickly, I'm just going to create a smart object for this as I did before, plunk that into my dev, and now let's go run it. So here's my dev down here. There's my asset list smart object, and I'll go ahead and execute it. And sure enough, we see again here my list method, and the brand is now required. Lenovo. I'm going to go ahead and execute this, and voila, we get the same results as we saw before. So let's give this a second shot. Now let's try Dell, see if we've got any Dell assets out here. And sure enough, we do. We see a few Dell Precision, some Inspirons, etc. And that's what we would expect to see from a Dell brand list. So this is how easy it is to add parameters then to your CAML queries. You can add them wherever you want. You can even include them in the actual CAML section of this. They don't have to just be in the value section. So ref name, you could actually pass in the field name that it was going to filter by. You could pass this in other locations such as the sort and top references and so forth. So you could really get creative with how this is passed in, because this can be macro substitution replaced anywhere within the CAML document. Additionally, you can also pass in those parameters as the site URL or relative URL, making this pretty flexible in its ability to actually pull from different sites and different lists, even all through the use of different parameters. So this can be an extremely flexible tool in being able to do that. Again, then with it being able to then mark these as required, change their types, and have it doing automatic type matching can really make this a pretty powerful tool. So that's been the introduction to parameters. In the third of the three sections here, I'll cover how to use this tool to perform search queries, and you'll see that next.